Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Manstream Media, a place where you're going to find a male-friendly perspective on both the news and the issues. And tonight we're talking about something that's going to be tough to talk about. Tonight we're talking about circumcision. It's a very difficult kind of thing for men to talk about, and it's a difficult thing for women to talk about, too. And with us tonight is Paul Elam. Paul, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Indeed. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you. So where do we start with circumcision?
Well, I think we should probably begin with a couple of things. One is, it is the difficulty of talking about this. I've been a men's advocate for a number of years, and circumcision, or what should be more accurately called male genital mutilation, is probably one of the least discussed topics in the whole arena of men's issues. Yet it's one of the most tragic and barbaric abuses of men that we have going today, sanctioned by medical science, who has turned it into a $500 million a year industry. There is something about, understandably, about cutting on men's penises and babies' penises that is a tough subject for people to look at directly and to look at objectively. We have some areas of religion, although not near as many as you might think, that cross over into this. But basically the trauma, the idea of mutilating, sexually mutilating a child is just an emotionally touchy subject. It's difficult for people to get close to, and I will predict, probably compared to most of our shows, there is going to be fewer comments on this. There will be fewer comments on the website. We just ran an article about this by Patricia, let me see what her last name, Robinette, an excellent article on circumcision on the site, which you can read right now. It's called Winnie the Pooh, John the Baptist, Tonsils, Appendix, and Foreskin. A great article that I recommend to everybody. I want to tell everybody, too, that in the low bar to this hangout, there is a great, unbiased, informative video on the history of circumcision, the reality of it, what circumcision is and what it's doing, and about whether or not it's medically necessary. But that being said, it is something that we need to talk about. And I think one of the first things we ought to do is go into the history, because I believe it's true, Tom, that we really don't have any record of where circumcision comes from originally or why it was done.
Yes, I think it's very murky, although there are some indications about what people were thinking in last century. In fact, that Kellogg quote, you want me to bring that up?
Well, yeah. Well, let's first acknowledge, though, that the idea, now one of the main supports I hear, and to me it's absolute nonsense, is that circumcision is a good thing because it promotes better hygienics in men. The foreskin on a male penis, like is present in every other or most other mammals that we know of, is actually a very good hygienic protective device for the head of the penis. That's what one of its purposes.
Of course.
It covers the penis. Physicians recommend that in terms of self-hygiene, you only need to clean what's exposed. Why? Because the foreskin protects and keeps sterile the surface of the head of the penis.
Exactly.
So the idea that you're practicing it's more hygienic to have your foreskin removed is absolutely unscientific, and it's nonsense.
It's nuts. In fact, if you look at medically, the foreskin covers the head of the penis. It also covers the meatus. The meatus is a little hole there at the end of the penis. And if you compare the meatus of circumcised men with uncircumcised men have this nice, healthy, big old hole where the meatus is. But circumcised men tend to be smaller and smaller. So you would imagine that, and they say that's because there's more infections that occur because the foreskin's not there to protect it. So there's all kinds of physical things that happen from circumcision that people don't even know about, that are not good.
None of them are good.
Really.
I think the other point to bring up in the history of circumcision, what Tom was alluding to just a couple of moments ago, is that it was an ancient tradition. It was more or less abandoned for a long time. We know that the ancient Greeks saw it as barbaric. It was picked up by Roman culture after Christian theology came into dominance. It became much more popular and widespread. But I would guess that the reason for it is the same reason that it found a big resurgence in the United States in the mid-1800s during Victorian times. And Tom has a quote from one of the major proponents of the revival of circumcision, J. Harvey Kellogg. He is of Kellogg's cereal fame. He's the guy that invented the cornflake. And he wanted circumcision to be popularized again, but his reasons for it had nothing to do with hygienics. And Tom has a quote from him that will show you what his reasoning was, and I'll read it to you now.
It's actually a quote from that article on AVFM.
Yes, it is, but this comes directly from John Harvey Kellogg, who was a medical doctor and the inventor of cornflakes. A remedy for masturbation, which is almost always successful in small boys, is circumcision. The operation should be performed by a surgeon without administering anesthetic, as the brief pain, we'll get into that in a moment, attending the operation will have a salutary effect upon the mind, especially if it be connected with the idea of punishment, as it may well be in some cases. The soreness, which continues for several weeks, interrupts the practice, masturbation, and if it had not previously become so firmly fixed, it may be forgotten and not resumed. If any attempt is made to watch the child, he should be so carefully surrounded by vigilance that he cannot possibly transgress without detection. If he only is partially watched, he soon learns to elude observation, and thus the effect is only to make him more cunning in his vice. Tom, I need you to take the floor a minute because I don't know where to start with that.
Well, it just tells you where they were coming from. It tells you what kind of mindset they had. The mindset was damn well connect pain with sex with men, not with women, mind you. They're not talking about circumcising women. They're talking about connecting pain for men with sex. And, because it's something you shouldn't be doing, that masturbation, that is, So, it's so important to understand that this was really the mindset. It's hard to believe now that people really thought that way. But they did, and that impacted the kinds of decisions they made about whose penis to cut.
This isn't it, Tom, sort of like the ultimate form of aversion therapy. They used to have, and I think they still do for smoking cessation. They hook people up to electric shock, and every time they lift their hand to take a puff off a cigarette, they get zapped and zapped. And they'll do the same thing with alcohol. There is aversion therapy still being practiced on people. Keep in mind, let me tell you this as somebody that worked in addictions for years, aversion therapies have short-term success and long-term abysmal failure. So It's not something like we're talking about something that works. But what we're talking about here is sadomasochism practiced on infants because of a Victorian mentality about sex and about self-pleasuring being wrong. There was a commenter on the Google Plus page that stipulated that, or asserted anyway, that this was done because the architects wanted to channel sexual energy into reproductive sex instead of masturbation. I would like that person to send us a site for that, some sort of evidence of it, because personally, on first look at that, I'm not buying it. It makes a lot more sense to me that these were people that were Victorian mentality, that thought sex was bad, that it was of the devil, that it was something evil, and that self-pleasuring was something terrible. And of course, at the time, medical doctors came out with masturbation as a cause of all sorts of diseases, And then we see over the next 70 years, 80 years, from the 1850s until nearly 1930, circumcision was touted as a cure almost every disease you can think of, for deafness, for blindness, for dumbness, for paralysis, for any number, for syphilis. It was touted as a cure for
eye problems, tuberculosis, penile cancer, epilepsy, spinal paralysis, etc. Syphilis, all of it. Circumcision will take care of that for you.
And these were, mind you, people that made their bread and butter off of circumcision. Yeah, I tell you what, I think being an MRA and donating to ABFM cures lung cancer. And will grow your penis to enormous sizes.
Oh God, that's the worst thing about it.
Absolutely. But no, this is a racket, and right now it's a racket that involves 1.1 million circumcisions per year in the United States. Here's another area we should get straight. Keep in mind that in Canada, less than 20% of men are currently circumcised. And that happened when the state, the National Health Care Plan in Canada quit paying for it. Suddenly people didn't see it as necessary anymore when they had to shell out a couple of $100 to have it done. In Europe, 80% of men are not circumcised. There is most places in the world, circumcision is the minority, but when you get to the United States, what's the numbers, Tom? 50 to 80%, something like that?
8%, and it ends up being 1 million little boys a year.
$500 million a year industry of mutilation run by the medical establishment in the United States. Let that sink in for a minute. We have, in 2014, in the most advanced technological and supposedly enlightened age in human history, we have an industry in one major country of sexually mutilated infants that pays our medical establishment $500 million a year with no medical necessity, no medical reasoning for it whatsoever. And in fact, it is something that evolved out of superstition, and the medical establishment practices no about it. They do not look at this in terms of scientific research or medical necessity. They look at it like this. This is what our doctors are doing for us. And I think every last one of them should be in prison.
Well, there you go. We'd have a lot more healthy penises.
Yeah, yes, we would have more healthy penises, and we would also have, I think, a society that could talk about circumcision, because right now we don't have one. I mean, this conversation, even in the men's rights community, is extremely rare.
Yes.
And it is concerning.
Yeah, there's some good reasons that it's very difficult to talk about, you know, because, I mean, people are seeing now that the circumcision, at least a small PTSD in every man who underwent it, and sometimes more than small. I mean,
can you tell us a little bit more about that, now, Tom? I know that in one of my personal conversations with you, you talked about the elevation of there's brain chemicals, and I forget which one it was, that is, and that it happens in infants, and I believe you said that it remains at extremely high levels for up to 6 months after circumcision.
Yes. I don't remember exactly the names of things. It was cortisol, I think. There's a number of levels that go up with extreme pain like that. I mean, they don't use anesthesia. There's no anesthesia. And so these little infants are just in incredible pain for a very long period of time. I mean, imagine someone cut your penis now. I mean, what would that feel like? And how long would it take before you stopped having pain? A long time. So we've got these little boys who have just come into the world, and whammo, we cut them without anesthetic. It's absolutely insane. And the only word I can think of it is insane.
Can you think of another surgical procedure? And keep in mind, too, that we are talking that, and I know that this is documented science, the foreskin itself, which is not really a separate organ from anything else, it's just something that we call, we give it a name after it's cut off so we know what to call it. It is actually about 1/3 of the skin that surrounds the penis, and it contains tens of thousands of nerve endings, along the same level of nerve endings that are contained in the human fingertip. That's how sensitive this is. If you know, people will tell you that getting a finger stick when you go to the doctor is, for a brief moment, a lot more painful than them drawing blood out of your arm. It's because of the sheer numbers of nerve endings that are in the fingertips. That's part of how human beings are designed.
Yes.
Well, the number of nerve endings in the foreskin are at or more than what you have in the human fingertip, and by design, we cut that off without anesthesia. Is there ever any other surgical procedure that you know of, Tom, that is intentionally human beings are cut on in areas of high density nerve endings and they are intentionally not given anesthesia?
I can't think of one. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. They still do that today. It's just mind-blowing. And the thing is, you know, these nerve endings in the foreskin are very different from nerve endings in other parts of the body. I think they call them Meissner corpuscles, and they're very, very sensitive, and they're very unique because they can only feel pleasure. They don't feel pain, but they're exquisitely sensitive to pleasure, and that's what we cut off.
And that's not to say that when you circumcise there's no pain. Those Meissner corpuscles are individual things, but there is also pain sensitivity there that's higher than it is probably in any other part of the body.
You would think so. You would think so.
One thing I think it's also important to note too, because there always with circumcision comes up a religious connotation. That Jewish people circumcise, that other religious groups circumcise. If you look at the reality of things, though, this is not, I would gather to say, most circumcisions in the United States, which is where most all of them come from, are not a religious ceremony. There's rabbis that conduct circumcisions. There is doctors that do them for Christian families. But most people get circumcisions out of cultural habit. It's just like something you're supposed to do when your male baby is born. It's not a directive from God, and in fact, people should be aware that there is a group called Jews Against Circumcision. There are Muslim groups against circumcision. There are Christian groups against circumcision. There is nothing biblical or scriptural that instructs people to circumcise that I have ever been able to have anybody show me, and I've asked for it many, many times from people of religious faith to show me in their scripture, in their doctrine, where circumcision is mandated. Nobody's ever been able to show that to me, and if you have that proof, fine. Now again, I'm not saying if you even showed me somewhere in scripture where it said to circumcise, that I would think it's worth 2 cents. I mean, it also says in scripture that you need to cut the throats of bulls and smear the blood everywhere.
And I think it's worth noting here that the female circumcision is outlawed, and they don't care if it's religious. They don't care if it's cultural. It's just outlawed, period. So no matter what your culture says, no matter what your religion says, you cannot circumcise a young girl in the United States, period.
As much as I hate to quote her, Ann Coulter said, she's not one of my favorite people, but she did make, I think, a very intelligent statement to say that we outlawed female circumcision 20 minutes after we knew it existed.
Yeah.
And yet, with men, it's just, we can't even talk about what a circumcision is without people clearing the room.
Yep.
And that makes it very difficult to change. It makes it very difficult to challenge these doctors. I've got, again, we have people, and I'm not going to step near the politics of it, that carry on all kinds of demonstrations about abortion, and people that feel passionately about doing it. And we have almost nobody, a few intactivist groups, which I very much respect and admire for the work that they do.
Absolutely.
But where are the protests against mutilation? Where is the news media coverage of the protest against mutilation? It doesn't exist. You're looking at, this is the media coverage of circumcision right here. And what does that tell you about the practice?
Yeah, it tells us that it must be men who are being hurt, because no one gives a crap if it's men.
Nope, nobody gives a shit. Tom, we've got a comment from Peter Wright I want to put up, and let's see what he has to say. Peter Wright is saying, a recent study found proof of higher levels of alexithymia among circumcised males. The study, and the URL, it's in the comments. Alexithymia is a condition associated with severe trauma and PTSD in which the sufferer represses their feelings to the point that they are no longer able to detect or verbalize their emotional feelings. Thank you, Peter, for that. I don't have any doubt that that's true.
I'm with Peter 100%. I think that's correct. I've heard of that study, and I'd like to learn more about it. I know that a lot of the alexithymia research has been done by people who are, let's just say, not male-friendly, and they're basically blaming men for not dealing with their feelings. But this is interesting, because what it's saying is that uncircumcised men have an easier time dealing with their feelings than circumcised men. Now, why could that be?
Well, mainly because they haven't been through trauma.
They didn't get traumatized. They didn't get amputated when they were little babies.
This has to be, and I'm not trying to be brutal for clickbait's sake or for hyperbole.
Oh, go ahead.
This must be, a circumcision must be one of the most excruciating possible experience you could go through. To have somebody, what they do is they pull the foreskin forward by the tip with forceps, and then they take scissors and they cut a line underneath the penis about a third of the way down, and then they cut a circle all the way around the penis until it comes off. Right in the thick of tens of thousands of nerve endings, they strap the baby's arms down.
I was going to say, that not just the arms, the legs too. They're strapped in.
Yes.
This is terrorism.
That can't be a good thing.
It's terrorism.
I got to tell you, part of the problem is us. I know that in the first many years of my advocacy for men's issues, I would have people approach me and say, what about circumcision? And there was part of me emotionally that just went like this.
Yes, yes.
I went, it gets into religion, it's customary, we got so many other issues.
Yes.
There was an aversion in me to the core, to the idea of even looking at this. And it took years for me as a men's advocate before I was willing to peel away the defenses and start actually looking at circumcision. There's some pretty heavy duty, and it may have something to do with my own circumcision.
Yes, and it has to do with most of us men who are alive today. And they're calling it now the circumcision coma, where people, men who have been circumcised, are living under this, it's almost like a coma, where we are unable really to understand that we were amputated, that we've been through a horrible mess. And we tend to minimize, we tend to push it off, we tend to laugh about it or whatever, but it's there, and it's a trauma, and it's very, very difficult. So circumcision trauma, it comes from this book, or circumcision coma, it comes from a book called Unspeakable Mutilations, which is just, in fact, I've got the cover right here. Why
don't you put that up?
Let's put the cover up, because we have a friend who did it, actually. Let's see. Is that, yeah, there it is.
And Tom, who did the illustration
The
on the book.
illustration was done by our own Alison Tiemann, or Typhon Blue. So, well done, Typhon. It's beautiful.
Well
And
done,
the book is very powerful. That's where I learned about the whole circumcision coma thing. And I've learned a huge amount from reading through this book. It is just an absolutely remarkable book that I love dearly. Of course, I did write the foreword for it, so I'm a little biased in that respect. But it's a really good book. It's by a researcher in New Zealand who has done a huge amount of work on circumcision. And he's a wonderful man, and the book is really worth it. The most important thing about this book is he is letting men tell their stories. The book is filled with men's stories about circumcision. And it's an eye-opener. It's a real eye-opener.
Is that book available on Amazon?
Yeah, that's available on Amazon.
Folks,
put a link to it in the...
Unspeakable Mutilations, Circumcised Men Speak Out, illustration by Typhon Blue, forward by Tom Golden. I have not read it yet. You can bet I will be buying it because I think that the ABFM is going to be digging deeper and deeper and deeper in this subject.
Well, that's a good place to dig. He does a lot of help in understanding what's really going on, and I can't say enough about the book. I really like it. But importantly, he's also involved in the circumcisionharm.org site. Do you know about that?
No.
There's a
yes.
circumcision harm.
Site. You might want to switch your graphics there, Tom.
Oh, here you go. Let's see. I think this is the one here. Yeah, there we go. This is the front page of the circumcisionharm.org site, and it's a survey, basically, that has gone up on the web for men who have been circumcised. And they've got, I think, up to 1,000 people now, 1,000 men who've responded. And they will give you, when you go there, you can look at the results of the survey. And it is absolutely mind-blowing sometimes and fascinating. And so you might want to go and take the survey, but also go and look at it. Lots of men here. And let's see, there's one here. This is a chart that comes from that site. And the chart shows the men's responses to the question. I think it was something like, how do you feel when you remember your circumcision, or even talk about your circumcision, and look at all the responses that men have. It's really a fascinating and potent place to go and have a look. But let's see if I can remember to turn that back on. But
one has to wonder, Tom, and again, this is pure and mere speculation on my part, but I have to wonder, if you enter life as somebody who's strapped down to a table and tortured and has part of your body removed, how much that might actually affect your psyche for the rest of your life when it comes to self-esteem, self-worth, all those other issues.
I can't imagine that it doesn't. And, it's coming out in strange places now. We're finding some men have a situation where they just get very tense right before sex. And some people are thinking now that this may be a remnant of that circumcision. Some men have an aversion or almost a phobia about hospitals or about isopropyl alcohol. They smell it, and bingo. There's this anxiety that comes up, this tension that comes up. So I think that this kind of stuff sort of spreads throughout a man's life in ways that we really don't know about yet. So, we have probably, 75% of men today are circumcised in the United States. So a lot of us have this PTSD in one way or another. And, of course, like we've said, it's not talked about. People don't bring it up. It's unmanly.
Yeah, and I've also heard a lot of people say, and I think it's absolutely asinine, and there's a great refutation to that in the article that's on ABFM right now. But a lot of people say, well, you were an infant, you don't remember what happened, so how can it be traumatic? Okay, let's buy that logic. That means if you're a drunk female and you're passed out unconscious and a half dozen guys rape you, then what's the big deal? You don't remember it. How could it be a bother to you? This kind of mentality is something we would never place on women at all. Trauma is trauma. What we do know, and it's not disputable, it's not a matter of argument, is that your body and your brain recognize trauma. Whether you're conscious of it at the moment or not, If people in pain and comas can register it on their EEGs. You can see pain happening in the body. And because something happened to you when you're an infant that you may not consciously remember when you're 25 years old does not mean it did not have a lasting impact on your psychology, your emotional state, and physiological.
Yes, that's one of the things, the title of this book, Unspeakable Mutilations. And by the way, I don't get anything. If you buy that book, I get nothing. I'm not invested in it in a monetary way at all, just in a way that I think it's a great book. But the title, Unspeakable Mutilations, the first meaning of that is that little boys, little infant boys, have no way to speak out when they're mutilated. They have no words. And so what happens is the trauma goes into the body. It gets stuck in the body. There's no words. There's no verbal stuff. You could talk until you're blue in the face. You're not going to get there, because it's stuck in the body. Unspeakable mutilations. The other piece of that the author talks about is it's unspeakable because no one wants to hear it. People don't want to hear it, so it's unspeakable. And of course, then the last part is it's unspeakable because men don't want to talk about it. For a variety of good reasons, we don't want to talk about it.
Which is why, for me, Tom, as much as it may be upsetting to most men, I'm not blaming men for their silence. I understand the nature of it. Like I said, there were years where I was working hard as a men's advocate, and I didn't even want the word circumcision near me. There was just a wall built between me and looking at that word.
Yes.
At the very least, we do need to appeal to mothers in this culture to start asking, do you want your son mutilated when he's born? Is this really what you want? Why do you want it? Do you know why that you want him circumcised? Is your reason as shallow and petty as you want him to look like his father? But how can any parent, and I'll put it on fathers and mothers as well, how can you entertain a horrifically painful procedure on your infant baby when you don't even know why you're doing it? If you believe that it's because of hygiene, read the science. Invest enough in your child to educate yourself about what's happening. But somebody needs to step up, and unfortunately, I don't like it, but it's the reality of life. Women get listened to more than men about any matter sexual. And I believe it will take mothers in this culture stepping up and questioning doctors and demanding to know the medical necessity for circumcision, and telling them that if they don't have justification for slicing on their son's penis and removing a third of the organ and throwing it away, or selling it so they can make face cream, which is like a really big deal nowadays, face cream made from stem cells from foreskins, so that women can de-wrinkle their faces. This is, it's just absolutely bizarre that we're having a discussion about the fact that we mutilate infants to make face cream and to make dollars for medical professionals. It's not like they're working at Johns Hopkins, they're working in Auschwitz. And I'd say that with no sense of irony or hyperbole whatsoever. This is an abomination that's going on in this culture. It is evil, pure and simple, and the society looks the other way. Why? Just boys.
It's men. Men are disposable.
And we don't have to care about their pain at all, no matter how barbaric, no matter how incredibly cruel it is.
And they do. They do. God
you can
bless
make
men.
business out of it. Absolutely incredible. There is also a part of that article and other articles I've seen. Again, I want to recommend to everybody, go into the low bar and watch that video. That video was not made by an MRA. It's nothing like that. It's made by a medical doctor that just goes over the basic real facts about circumcision. And one of the things that came up in the article is that a comparison of circumcision to rape. just in some fundamental aspects that rape is an invasion of bodily integrity. It is something that's forced on somebody against their will, because certainly an infant cannot give meaningful consent to being hacked up that way. And I know that some people would have the notion that is just horrible to compare rape to circumcision. And you know what? I agree with you, because I think that male genital mutilation, I shouldn't call it circumcision, is worse than rape. At least with rape, you're left with your body intact. People should know, and it's scientifically proven, that removing the foreskin from a human baby boy removes 75% of their sensitivity and pleasure in sexuality. There'll be a lot of guys that say, well, I was circumcised and I have plenty of pleasure. Yes, still sex is still pleasurable for men after circumcision. But if you've been circumcised, you don't know what sex feels like uncircumcised. You have no idea. You have no baseline to compare it to. Exactly. Tom brought up earlier the pictures of penises that are circumcised and uncircumcised. And one of the things you see on circumcised penises versus uncircumcised is that on the head of a circumcised penis, because it's exposed when it's supposed to be protected, it actually builds callus material, thick, deadened skin all over the head of the penis. And then you notice the head of the uncircumcised penis, and it is smooth and moist and supple and full of nerve endings. Circumcised penis, callus. You can't even begin, I think, to really rationalize in your mind that there's not a loss of sensitivity from that alone, not to mention the missing nerve endings.
Yeah, we're living in a crazy place, man. You know, it's just it's absolutely bizarre that it still goes on. It's mind-blowing.
Well, we've got another comment here. Tom, if you don't mind, I'll bring it up.
Oh, please do.
And let's take a look at it now. I'm glad to see that other men are gradually starting to speak up and stand up. Just last year, the Health Council here in Germany has decided that it is still okay to genitally mutilate young boys in the year 2013. Most powerful council members were women.
Oh, God.
In the country of poets and thinkers, it is literally insane. I was 4 when I was circumcised, and I was fully conscious. I remember how it was to have a foreskin, and it is incomparable. These people have just cut off the most sensible part of me. I think he meant sensitive, but just the same part of me, and threw it away into a trash can as if it was nothing, and I had no say in it. Circumcising a woman is, of course, a completely different thing. Yeah, Sandra Bullock said that circumcising her son was the greatest day of her life.
Wow.
Fuck you, Sandra Bullock.
That tells you something about her, eh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cutting my son's penis was a great day for me.
Oh, my gosh. That's bizarre.
How sick is this culture? I mean, it's just...
Yeah. Thank you, Angel, for that comment. That's
yes,
helpful to know about Germany.
Much. And sorry to hear that happen to you. I mean, it's bad enough as an infant, but a 4-year-old?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. You know, most people think of circumcision as being like a little snip, you know, but I think it's a lot more than that. And what they're saying now is that it's not a snip at all. It's the size of an adult male. The size would equal a 3x5 card of skin.
Yeah.
A 3x5 card of skin would be how much is cut off from an infant. That's a lot. I mean, we're talking about the infant's probably not that much, but it would grow into being 3.5 or 3x5 card. That's a lot of skin, and that hurts. The other bad thing for men is, I hate to tell you this, guys, but they know now that circumcised men, the length of the flaccid penis is 5% shorter than the uncircumcised. I just thought I'd throw that in. Sad but true.
Well, and of course, the the ends justifies the means, right? Because we can't forget, this isn't a real bona fide medical procedure. This isn't something that's preventative medicine. It's not something that is religiously valid in any way, form, or fashion. Circumcision is a barbaric, Victorian age, repressed sexuality device to mutilate young boys not feeling sexual, so that the people that walk around with sticks up their asses can feel like they're in control of the sexuality of others. And now it's so common in the United States that it's done just a matter of routine.
Yes.
I hope, and I would like to see, most of the intactivist groups out there right now are groups of gay men that are petitioning against this. I think that's a great thing, but I would certainly like to see a lot more of the men's rights community in general dedicating some work, and we're going to. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm going to propose right now, it's going to be one of those things that's really unpopular with some. Oh, you know, somebody can give me some Kleenex later. But I would like to forward people to forward us at ABFM. You can contact me at paul@avoiceformen.com. I would like the names of doctors that are known to be doing circumcisions routinely. And I want to start publishing their names and the fact that they're mutilating babies for a living. I want to at least get that out there in their Google results. When people check out their doctors, we have some real flex with Google on this website. Unless your name is John Smith, or unless you're some famous person with 10 million Google return references on your name, it's likely to go straight to the top of returns. And I want people to know the names of doctors that are mutilating our baby boys. This is not to inspire attacks against them. This is only to inspire knowledge in people of who they're dealing with. These people need to be called to the carpet. You shouldn't be making a lucrative income off the torture of infants. I don't care if it's legal or not.
Yes. That'll be interesting, Paul. That's a good idea.
We're going to do it.
It blows my
I have
mind.
to do the research myself, but if you got a name of a doctor and you can link us to proof that he does circumcisions, please send it. We'll give him his place in the public record.
We could probably call hospitals and just ask them who does the circumcisions there.
Yep.
You know, they'd probably tell you right up. You could probably find out on the internet. Who knows? But what blows my mind is the medical profession is trying to justify circumcision with all kinds of research. You know, I read one today. It just didn't make any sense. They said that we would save, or it would cost us $4 billion if we don't circumcise more people, more men in the United States. That's what I said. And then they started comparing Europe with the United States as far as, Europe, there's only 20% are circumcised, but the United States more are, so we're becoming more like them. But they never do say, well, there's more penile cancer in Europe, because there's not. You know, it's like there's no reason to do this. They used some bogus predictor thing. I mean, who knows how much of it was made up, but it's like they're going to these huge lengths to try and create this aura that this is the right thing to do. Bullshit! It's not the right thing to do. Stop cutting off penises. Jeez.
I feel your pain.
I'm telling you, this one gets me pissed off, because
and there's even more going on with it. People should know, if you haven't, and you can look through the articles from Robert O'Hara, a couple of others at avoiceformen.com right now. Look at what's happening in Africa. All the bullshit that has been fed the public since the mid-1800s. This circumcision cures masturbation, it cures blindness, it cures all these diseases, and now with the same bogus, questionable research. In 2014, they're running around in Africa saying that it prevents the spread of HIV, which it does not. It does not prevent the spread of HIV. But guess what? Now here's where the real dirt comes in. One of the major proponents of the circumcision campaign, in which they intend to circumcise 25 million infant baby boys, teenage boys, and grown men in Africa through the Bill Gates Foundation, through efforts of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and through the efforts of the UN. One of the major proponents of this push that's going through Africa right now to mutilate 25 million black men is pushed by the guy that has the patent on the clamping device that is used in the surgery to circumcise. He stands to make $200 to $300 million from selling these clamping devices, mutilating people. And they are using propaganda now. Some of you, if you Google YouTube, if you look on YouTube, you will see forced circumcisions where women are getting paid money to run around in African villages demanding that men have the cut in order to be real men. This is all part of funds being fed to them. And they are actually grabbing boys, 12, 14, 16 years old, dragging them out of villages and forcibly circumcising them. There's money behind this. It's all there. There's films of it on YouTube. It's been in the news. You can Google it and find out. This is not BS. But right now, there is a massive, well-financed UN campaign in Africa to circumcise upwards of 25 million men against their will, telling them that it will prevent the spread of HIV. But one of the really, really crazy parts of this, and of course it's corrupt, so you're going to get a lot of craziness, is that these were taken from what was called the Orange Grove studies. And the people who conducted the Orange Grove studies did say yes, they felt like that circumcision may prevent some spread of HIV. However, they said that circumcision was not the answer, that the answer was condoms, that the use of condoms would help stop the spread of HIV. But what did Bill and Melinda Gates and Hillary Clinton and the UN do? They cherry-picked the part of the executive study where it said circumcision may help spread the course of HIV in Africa, ignored the real conclusions of the evidence, and developed a multi-billion-dollar program to go in and circumcise 25 million men against their will. They had been buying into African media. They're buying into African culture so that women are demanding that men get the cut. It's the most gross, distorted, corrupt, sadistic program ever in history, happening right now, folks.
Wow.
It's happening right now.
That's incredible. You know, I wonder sometimes about, since the United States, the number of men circumcising or boys circumcising in the United States is going down. It was, I think, 70-something% about 30 years ago, and now it's 58%. So we're losing a number of circumcisions. I'm wondering if they're not trying to promote it in Africa because ours are going down. They can get more foreskins in Africa, and they're going to sell those foreskins.
Absolutely.
You know, I think the research has to pay, what is it, $500 per foreskin? Is that what they said? $430, and for research it was $430, and for a cosmetic, no, research it was $2-something, cosmetics it was $400 and something per foreskin. So take 25 million and multiply it by that, and that's a lot of money, baby.
Foreskins alone are worth an absolute fortune. Why? Okay. I'm going to say it, I don't care who likes it, so that middle-class white women in America can have nice, expensive skin cream and feel like that they're using a product that Oprah Winfrey has endorsed.
Oh boy.
This is what's going on. People talk about the horrors of the Nazis making lampshades out of the skin of Jewish people back in the 40s, which was just I mean, it's hard to even stomach the mentality of people capable of doing stuff like this. This ain't no different, folks. It's no different at all. If you're going to mutilate people in order to make face cream for your women, God help us all.
The truth. I've never made that connection, Paul. That's a powerful connection.
Yeah, well, it's what's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
So the mutilation itself is abhorrent. What's happening with the foreskins is equally abhorrent. What's happening with these clamping devices, basically pushing unnecessary, and also consider sub-Saharan Africa, not the most sanitary circumstances, not the most advanced medical procedures. We already have 100 infants a year in the United States die from botched circumcisions. And what was the numbers you were giving earlier, Tom, on
18,000 boys a year get corrective surgery because of botched circumcisions.
18,000.
Circumcisions. 18,000. That's, I think, about 50 a day in the United States. 50.
Well, just boys.
Yeah, really. Oh, it's heartbreaking.
If this happened to one female child in the United States, to one female child, it would be national news for weeks. The FBI would be on a manhunt for the people that did it. There would be a whole society with pitchforks and torches marching down streets. Every college campus in the U.S. and Canada would be having solidarity marches condemning the horrible act of female genital mutilation. And when it comes to boys, we turn it into an industry and make jokes about it.
And make money off it.
If that sounds angry, man, all I got to say, if that doesn't piss you off, something wrong with you.
You know, the question I think we're left with is, what can we do about it? You know, and you've mentioned one thing, that is outing doctors who are involved in this. But I wonder if there's not more that we can do. And I know one of the things I got from reading this book was they talked about men confronting their parents and men talking with other men. And it's an interesting thing. You know, I think that's one thing that we can do. That's, of course, the shed thing, again, plays in here. I mean, if men were in a shed together and kind of doing something shoulder to shoulder, it'd be much more likely they'd be able to talk about whatever. You know, not that we're going to try and, you know, have a circumcision group or something like that. I mean, that's not the plans. But for men to have a safe place where they could talk about something if they wanted to. But the whole idea of talk with your parents about it is a fascinating one, and it's a very rocky road. A lot of these men say, no, it's better not to say a word, you know, because they didn't know what they were doing, and it's not going to help now, and they're probably right. And other times they say, I'm going to confront them. You know, I'm going to tell them what my side of things. So it's a difficult situation, and I think there's some good websites out there that people are talking about that. The foreskin restoration sites, circumcision sites. I forget the names of the different ones, but I mean, these are issues that I think are important, and this is a way to slowly start breaking this stuff down. You know, the more it gets out, and the more people start talking a little bit about it, the less it's going to be an automatic thing where we just, oh, we circumcise boys. You know, I mean, we need to stop that. Get the media to start looking up to things a little bit. You know, get them to see the horror that we can see.
I think you mentioned a lot of good things that can be done, Tom. One of them, certainly, I am totally in favor of asking your parents, why did you have this done to me? Yeah. It doesn't mean that you need to attack your parents or that you need to try to riddle them with shame, but no problems typically get solved without discussion, without getting them on the table. And one of the first places you can go is to the people that had you circumcised and simply say, what was your reason? What were you thinking? Why did you do this?
Yes.
And that discussion alone is powerful. I think you can donate to Intactivist group. If you Google Intactivist, if you go to the website that Tom showed earlier with the book, Unspeakable Mutilations, that Typhon Blue did the illustration for, I bet they have a donation button on there.
Sure.
There are groups working on this. There are groups of Jews that are working on this as a group to end circumcision. There is Muslims doing that. If you belong to one of those communities, look at joining those groups. There are Christians that are coalescing around the idea of ending circumcision. The church came out officially, by the way, a long time ago saying that it was not necessary to be circumcised to be a Christian. That is on a matter of church records, but it's still commonly practiced in the Christian community. Bringing that up to your pastors, to your ministers, to your priests, to your rabbis, to your religious congregation, and saying, we really want you to talk about this to the congregation. We want you to bring this up as a subject and start speaking about it. The other tactic that I firmly believe in is naming and shaming. When people are doing wrong, and of course there's all the chicken littles out there and concern trolls and pearl clutchers that say, oh, you're doxing. No, we're not. If what somebody does for a living is a matter of public record, we have the right journalistically to speak about it and to do editorial opinion. Naming and shaming doctors. Nobody wants their medical profession associated with mutilations. That's what they're doing, though. So I think it's real important that we start giving them front page headlines at A Voice for Men and other men's websites and saying, here's the doctor, here's where he practices, and he does mutilate babies and charges for it.
Yes.
You know, and if he doesn't like it, he can stop.
Yes.
That needs to happen. But the only way you get at people making a buck off of misery is for them to feel some consequences for it. No different with crack dealers.
Yes, and make it public. You know,
Yes.
I'll never forget when I was a little guy, probably yay tall, going with my father to this protest, and it was to a judge's house, and a lot of people had gathered there protesting what this judge had done. It really taught me a powerful lesson because it made me think about why would they want to do that. And of course, the reason they wanted to do it was they were going to shame that judge and let them know that the community did not like the things they were doing. That's what we need to do. We need to stand up like that. We need to get off our ass and start standing up and saying, no, no more of this crap. Dumbass American Pediatric Society or whatever they are, they say, oh, circumcision, yes, that's a fine thing to do. Oh, well, that's crazy. It's just crazy. And I know that when the word gets out there, most Americans are going to agree with us. They're going to say, that is crazy. Once they know. But right now, people are in such a coma about the whole thing, they don't even think about it. So we got to get people mobilized. You got to get people aware first. And a part of the way you get people aware is to talk more about it, get it out there.
Rattle their cages.
Man, rattle them cages.
I want to turn this to a moment of outreach right now. I know that there will be people that belong to intactivist groups that will end up watching this hangout. If you have lists of doctors that you've confirmed or are doing circumcisions as a matter of routine, that are mutilating baby boys as a matter of routine, please send them to me. We will do something with them. We have found through experience that when we target, yes, I'm going to use the word target, when we target corrupt family court judges, we have an impact. We had one last year that we forced to recuse herself from a case, and the father in question ended up with custody of his children in a situation where custody should never have been removed from him because her corruption was so obvious. We need to stick this out there. So intactivist groups, please feel free to contact me at paul@avoiceformen.com. We want to do what we can help, and the best thing that we can do is use our standing in Google to put the names out there of doctors, and we'll tell doctors at any time, listen, you announce that you're no longer doing circumcisions, we'll remove the article and take you off the list. But until you do, we are going to write and write and write and post. And guess what? It only takes one paragraph. It takes me about 10 minutes to get a doctor exposed to the public for anybody that Googles him to find out that he's under scrutiny for being a child abuser. And that's what this is. If you don't like it, too bad. But if we don't stand up to this in a very, very assertive and very, very rigid way, they'll just keep doing it.
Indeed, that's true. Time to stand up, baby. That's good. Paul, we about there?
Yeah, we're about there. I want to add one more comment from Peter Wright, one of my favorite people, by the way.
Peter, I love your writing.
Peter Wright of gynocentrism.com.
Oh, that site, I'm still working my way through it. It is great stuff.
It's very heady intellectual material, but it is so informative. Go to gynocentrism.com. You get a chance. Do some reading of Peter Wright's material. He's quite brilliant. And to this, he also has to say, instead of the usual rationale about cleanliness, religion, aesthetics, disease, you have to wonder how much of circumcision is driven by an unconscious hatred toward males and male sexuality. Misandry is all around this, could be the primary motivation, simple to inflict pain on males. I don't find anybody, at least I'm not going to argue with him on that. I think that certainly if it's not what is driving circumcision, it is precisely what is driving the lack of resistance to it. We don't care about anything that hurts men. And by the way, I want to say this before we leave too. I wish I'd grabbed some sources. I'll go look for them, get them in the low bar. I have heard feminists argue that we should support circumcision because it makes a penis prettier to them.
Oh, God. Yeah, and so it goes. But, you know, I think Peter's got a point. You know, the reason they stopped female genital mutilation was because of the pain of women, the pain it would cause them. And so they're not stopping male genital mutilation, so what's the only conclusion one can draw? They don't care about the pain of men, period.
Just remember, folks, a very small group that are very vocal and persistent can produce just as much change as a majority. And that's what we're going to do. Well, with that, Tom, do you have any final words before we go?
No, except to say good night. Are we finished?
I think we're done.
All right. Thank you all very much for being with us tonight. It's been a joy to be with you and be a part of this mainstream media. And, of course, it's the way you get male-friendly news about your issues or something like that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday when we're going to have Warren Farrell with us, and we're going to be talking about what, Paul? What are we talking about? Fatherhood, the importance of fatherhood.
The need for fathers in the lives
need for fathers,
particularly boys.
Very important, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. So we'll see you. Good night.
And remember, folks, please give us a like on this video. That helps tweet it and spread it around. And if you haven't, please sub to this channel so that we can continue to expand getting this message out there to people. Everybody have a great week. We'll